Hello everyone and welcome back to the MTG Novels Project. The MTG Novels Project is available both on YouTube and as a podcast version. Check the description for more details. A legal note, this is an unofficial audiobook with original content belonging to Wizard of the Coast. This content is covered under 2017 Wizard of the Coast fan content policy. Listener discretion is advised. Today we're continuing with Chapter 15 of Planeswalker by Lynn Abbey. Xantcha and Sasina both screamed as the darkness sealed around them. Navigation was impossible, and it became one more tumbling object in the chaos raining down from the colliding islands. Sasina called her lady's name, begging for deliverance. Xantcha hoped Sarah could hear. The sphere wasn't like Urza's armor. The armor lasted until Xantcha willed it away, but once the sphere had risen, it collapsed as soon as it touched the ground. At least, that is what had always happened. It might do something different this time, when it had come out black. The jostling, which seemed to last forever, ended when they struck a decisive bottom. The sphere collapsed as it always had, coating Xantcha in soot and leaving them in a shower of rocks. Xantcha was stunned when a stone struck her in the head, but mind stars were all she saw through the sticky soot. Sasina's hand closed over hers. Xantcha let herself be guided to a place where the air was quiet. So what next? Xantcha asked, while she wiped away the sweat and soot from her eyes. There wasn't much to see. The air was dusty, and the overhead island, the island from which they'd fallen, that continued to rain chunks of itself onto the island where they were standing, remained close enough to keep them in twilight darkness. She feared another collision. "We can't stay here," she added, in case Selena had missed the obvious. They were both nursing bruises. Xantcha's hand came away bloody when she touched the throbbing spot where the rock had hit her skull. The left sleeve of Sasina's gown had torn to rags, and she was dripping soot-streaked blood from a gash on her forearm. Xantcha never worried about her own cuts. She healed quickly, and the infection or illness that the plague-born folk weren't interested in newt flesh. She worried about Sasina instead. Although Sasina had gotten them to safety beyond the rockfall, she was dazed and unresponsive. She held her bleeding arm in front of her and stared at it with glassy eyes. The folk of Sarah's realm were born, or so Sasina had claimed. Despite the strangeness of the floating island realm and the way Sarah's air sustained them, Sasina might be as fragile as the born folk usually were. The suit alone might kill her. Blood poisoning wasn't an easy death, or a quick one, but unless she had hidden injuries, Sasina's problem had to be shock and fear. "Waste not, want not. You're dead yet. Pull yourself." "It was black," Sasina interrupted. "I noticed," Xantcha said with a shrug. "It's always been clear before, but Eclipse was alive, and we'll use it again." Sasina burst free. "No, you don't understand. It was black. Nothing here is black. The lady doesn't permit it." She began to weep. "I told you, I couldn't call on black mana here." "Black mana? I am no sorcerer, Sasina. I've never called to the land in my life. But the sis has felt wrong. She had wakened worse since she used it, and the sphere had been black." "You shattered the land. Shattered it." Xantcha didn't demand gratitude, but she wouldn't stand for the abuse. "I didn't shatter anything. 2 islands collided and kept us alive the only way I knew how. Would you have ever left you to be crushed by the rocks? Yes. Yes. They'll come for you because of what you've done. They'll come for me for what you've done is all over me." "If I'd known that, I'd done it sooner," Xantcha lied. Xantcha wasn't in pain. If anything, she was numb. For the first time in centuries, she wasn't aware of Urza's cyst. Her hand felt cloth when she rubbed below her waist, but the rest of her couldn't feel her hand. The numbness was spreading. Part of her mind that knew she was healthy, or she was numb because she was empty. She didn't know what would happen if she called on the cyst while her gut was numb, and didn't want to find out unless she had to. "How long before your lady gets here?" "The lady won't come. She takes no part in death, even when she knows it must be done. The archangels will come." Sasina looked at the still crumbling underside of the original floating island. "Soon." Sasina dried her tears, leaving fresh streaks of blood and soot on her face. Then she did what Sarah's folks seemed to do best. She sat down, folded her arms in her laps, and settled down to wait. The gash on her arm continued to bleed, but Cecina didn't feel pain. Or maybe she hoped to bleed to death before the dreaded Archangel arrived. If her own life hadn't hung in the balance, Xantcha would have laughed at the absurdity. She grabbed Cecina below the shoulders and hauled the taller woman to her feet. You want to live, Cecina? You got us both away from the crawling rocks and dirt. She shook the other women, hoping for action. You want to live. You want to see Kenadurn again. A blink, a frown, nothing. This is not perfection, Xantcha shouted, and let Cecina go. The taller woman balanced on her own feet for a moment, then clumsily sat down again. Xantcha walked away in disgust. She got about 10 paces before the light of understanding brightened in her mind. You knew, Xantcha shouted as she ran back. You've known from the beginning. You've been expecting those arch-river angels since I woke up, and since before I woke up. Your precious, perfect lady sent me here to be killed, and sent you as what? A witness? Come back to the floating palace when everything's taken care of. All this time waiting for the archangels. I never wanted them to come, Cecina shouted back. It was the first time Xantcha had heard the other lady raise her voice. Perhaps the first time Cecina had raised it. She seemed to gasp by her outburst. Why not? Didn't you want to get back to the palace? And Kenadurn? Cecina gasped and fumbled for words. Don't you understand? I can't go back. Because I saved your life, my black mana, Xantcha thought she understood perfectly. If only our archangels had been a little quicker. Is that what you've been doing when you sat all the time? Praying to the archangels, get here soon? I didn't want you to wake up. Because while you were asleep, there's no chance you'd use your black powers. And nothing would draw the archangels to us. Once you're awake, you're so difficult, I was afraid to tell you anything. I'd be much less difficult, Xantcha said with exaggerated politeness, if I knew the truth. She sat down opposite Cecina. The perfect truth. Kenadurn. Xantcha rolled her eyes. Why am I not surprised that he is at the heart of the truth? You're very difficult. It is black mana in you. It rules you. The lady said so. Xantcha wondered what the lady had said about Urza, but that would have been a truly difficult question. I know nothing about black mana, but I'd argue with your lady's judgment. Go on, please, before we run out of time. How can you run out of time? Xantcha shrugged. Just talk. The lady smiled on Kenadurn and I. She had never encountered the divisions between the Sisterhood and the Angels. She had her blessing to come to the palace, but before we could get together, he was sent away, and I chose to accompany you. I would not have objected, Cecina continued quickly and emphatically. I served Lady Sarah proudly, willingly. We all know how she sacrifices herself to maintain the realm. It would be the worst sort of pride and arrogance to question her decisions. But I cannot believe this was her decision. To send me away to die, or send you away to die with me? Cecina had the decency to look uncomfortable. You are difficult, and you are devious. You imagine dark corners, and then you make them real. That was a criticism Xantcha had never heard from Urza's lips. You would never do anything among the sisters or angels, but if I were to speak to the lady, I'd tell her that except for your black mana, you would make a most excellent archangel, and I think she would agree. Am youngest among the sisters, but I have had the lady's confidence. I know she would not have sent me away without seeing me or telling me why. Then why hasn't she come looking for you? Wouldn't she notice you were missing, you and Kenadurn both? Cecina shivered. You ask such questions, Xantcha. I'd never think to ask such questions myself. She paused, and Xantcha raised her eyebrows unexpectedly. Until I met you? Now? I ask myself such questions, but I do not like my own answers. I ask myself if the lady has been deceived by those who were displeased that Kenadurn had given me his token, and no matter how hard I try to purge my thoughts, I cannot convince myself that she hasn't. Or maybe your lady's not perfect. Cecina's thin-lipped mouth opened, closed, and opened again. I don't know if she ever looked for me, or if she could not find me, but in either case, yes, there would be imperfections. So you see, I cannot go back to the palace, not with these thoughts in my heart. Kenadine is lost. You mock me, Xantcha. Do not bother to lie about it. But Kenadine is a paragon. He would have looked at me, and since he hasn't found you, but maybe he is looking. How many of these full knives are there? 1,000? 10,000? You shouldn't give up. He might just be one walk away. Think of the look on his face when he finds you here dead because you stopped trying to stay alive. Difficult, but right. Half right. A faint smile cracked the dirt on Cecina's face, then vanished. We cannot go back to the palace. Seems to me that's the exact place we should be going. We wouldn't be welcomed. Waste not, want not. Cecina, your precious lady is being lied to, and you'd roll over and die without your lover, because your enemies won't welcome you. Not enemies. Enemies! Anyone who wants you dead, Cecina, is an enemy of yours and your lady's. If you're determined to die, let's at least try to find this floating palace where your lady is surrounded by silent enemies. Urza will support you. That was a promise Zancha didn't know she was be able to keep, but it had to be made. Anything that would get Cecina thinking had to be done, because even if the Archangels didn't show up, the islands were likely to collide again. The upper island had taken the worst damage in the first collision, and might again in the second, but anything on the surface of the lower island was going to get squished like a bug. Difficult, Cecina repeated. Zancha stood up her hand, but right. I don't know where the palace is. Only the angels know. Didn't Kenadern ever tell you how he flew in and out? We never talked about such things. Zancha almost asked what they did talk about, but Cecina might not have answered, and she truly didn't want to know. Come on, let's at least start walking. We've got to walk ourselves clear of this overhead. Maybe when we get to an edge, we'll get lucky and see the wondrous palace. We can't. Can't what? We can't walk to the edge of an island. I don't think we can walk out from under the overhang. I tried, Zancha, before you woke up. I tried to balance you. I knew when you walked that way that you would have to come back. No apologies. I've done the same, Zancha said and offered her hand again. Come on. I've lived with worlds over my head, but not this close. Makes me nervous. Cecina reached and winched as the gash in her arm began bleeding again. It was ugly now, and would only get worse if they didn't find water soon. Zancha had seen free running water since she'd first opened her eyes, in Sarah's realm, but now that Cecina was moving again, she didn't seem worried about her wounds, so Zancha said nothing either. Zancha kept an eye on the island overhead to measure their progress. The lethargy that had slowed her on her previous walk was worse. They weren't covering any ground the way she would have liked. Even so, they were getting nowhere relative to the convoluted underside above them. Cecina looked at her every time she looked up, a look that expressed concessions and defeat. But Zancha kept walking. Cecina's remarks about black mana had confirmed Zancha's suspicion that Sarah's floating island realm was a magical place, as unnatural in its way as Phyrexia. The force that made Phyrexia, a world of concentric spheres, were as inexplicable as the ones that shaped Sarah's realm into thousands of floating islands. And perhaps not all that different from each other. She'd have questions for Urza when they met again. If they met again. And if she and Cecina could walk to a place where the opening between the colliding islands was large enough that she'd risk casting them adrift in the sphere. The thought of waking up in the cyst brought an end to the gut numbness. Zancha dropped to one knee. The Archangel will find us, Cecina said. Not the words Zancha wanted to hear at that moment. Every time you call him black mana, it brings them closer. I didn't call him black mana, Zancha insisted. Zancha used a mnemonic to awaken Urza's artifact. She didn't know how the fist made the sphere or the armor. Urza knew magic-based sorcery. The necessary insights had come with his eyes. He said the Thran hadn't used mana, so he wouldn't either. But the Thran had made Urza's eyes. Cecina thought Zancha looked in dark corners. Zancha didn't need imagination so long as she had Urza. The pain had faded and the numbness returned. Zancha's legs were leaden when she stood. She could barely lift her feet when she tried to walk. There's got to be another way. We'll wait until the Archangels find us. There is no other ways. Is Her Lady sensitive to black magic, or just the Archangels? Black magic has no place here. It hurts. We can all feel it, the Lady the most of all. She is aware of the whole realm as you are aware of your body. The Archangels patrol the lands looking for black mana and other evil miasmas. They eliminate evil before it can affect a lady. But when they found you and your other Urza, together they called Lady Sarah for a judgment. You've already been judged. When the Archangel find us, they won't call Lady Sarah again. They won't risk her health. None of us would risk it. If the lady sickened, we all would die. Another fortunate choice of words, given the state of Zancha's gut, but she had an idea. I'm going to get everybody's attention. The Archangels, and with any luck, your lady herself. Zancha yawned and threw the mnemonic for her armor. At first there was nothing, and she thought she'd lost her cyst altogether. Then the pain began, and she felt something, acid rising down her throat. Cena screamed, but Sancha couldn't have stopped the process if she wanted to. The armor burned as it flowed over her skin. It spared her eyes. When Sancha looked down, what she saw was black in darkness, as black and featherless as the walls of the unlit cave. She brought her hands together, saw them touch, and felt absolutely nothing. You've got the archangels, that's all. Cecina pointed to the narrow hostile blue eyes. We're doomed. Cecina stood more than 2 arms' length away, but with black color covering Sancha's ears, she sounded distant and underwater. Sancha looked in the indicated direction. A dazzling white diamond had appeared in a ribbon of golden light between the 2 islands. A moment's observation revealed that it was growing, moving towards them at considerable speed. From the air, then the floating island had edges. It was only from the ground that the horizon never became an edge. As the diamond grew larger, it became apparent that it had 5 parts. 4 small lights, one each in narrow and oblique points, and a much larger light in the center. The Aegis, Cecina said. The Aegis was also diamond-shaped and too bright to look at directly. Sancha held her black armor hand in front of her eyes and squinted through the peephole gaps between her fingers. She saw writhing plumes of yellow fire emerge from a hole that reminded her of a portal to the sun. Moving her hand slightly, she observed the smaller light. The archangel themselves, radiant, elongated creatures with dazzling wings that didn't move and smooth, fearless faces. They resembled Cecina the same way many complicated Phyrexians resembled newts. Not an encouraging thought. Sancha didn't think Irma's armor in its present condition would be proof against the Aegis. She tried to say goodbye to Cecina and discovered that armor had taken away her voice. Wind preceded the archangels. It shook boulders loose from the overhead island and lifted the island itself out of the way. One loosened boulder struck the ground so near to Sancha's feet that she felt the ground shudder. The wind died when the archangels brought the Aegis to a hovering halt. A good warriors anywhere, the archangel tested their weapon before putting it to use. A beam of light as hot as a Phyrexian furnace and many times as bright seared the land directly below the agents. Then the beam began to move towards Sancha and Cecina. It made no difference whether Sancha's eyes were open or closed. She was blind. It felt as if the back of her skull was on fire. Sancha had never believed in gods or souls, but facing the end of her life, Sancha found that she believed in curses. She had roughly cursed Lady Cecina's notion of perfection when she was struck down by a sideways wind. The wind was the word, and the word was halt. A woman's voice. This time there could be no mistaking it, even through Sancha's blackened armor. The great lady of the realm reigned in her archangels. The heat ebbed at once, but Sancha remained blind. A more ordinary voice, a man's voice, shouted, "Cecina!" Sancha guessed that Celidurn had found his beloved. She hoped Cecina was still alive. She'd hoped, too, that Urza might be part of the rescue party, but no one called her name. Someone did lift her to her feet and into the air. At least Sancha thought she'd been lifted. She assumed she was being carried by an angel or an archangel. Blind and numb as she was, it was impossible to be certain, and she was in no way to attempt to release Urza's armor, assuming she could release it. The journey lasted long enough for Sancha's vision to recover from its aegis searing. She was moving through the air of Sir's realm, tucked under the arm of the right side archangel. Craning her neck as much as she dared, Sancha caught a glimpse of a silver face with angles for nose, chin, and not so as a slit for the vision. A mask, she thought, because the air hand could see her at her waist, was flush with stretched sinew and pulsing arteries, apparent below normal-hued skin. Sancha could understand why the archangels might choose to cover their eyes, even when it was shut down. The Aegis, one golden tether to which her archangel held in his or her. The other hand was nothing. Sancha wanted to look at, easily 4 times as high as her archangel. It reminded of Sancha of nothing so much as a piece of the sun. The Sailor's realm did not have any other purpose. They left the Aegis behind, and shining among the floating islands, once the great island that they could only be Lady Cecera's palace came into view. The palace was many times the size of any other island. Sancha had seen, if she had to make a guess, she'd have said that the very center of the lady's creation. as all of Phyrexia had formed in spheres around the ineffable, but Xantcha had seen nothing like the palace in Phyrexia. Lady Sarah's home leapt and soared in fantastic curves. Xantcha could think of no stone or brick that would glisten as the palace walls and ribs glistened in the aegis light. Their underlying color was white or possibly golden gray. It was difficult to be certain. A myriad of rainbows confidently moved along every arch and into every corner. There was sound in all timbers to accompany the kaleidoscopic light, and not an echo of discord. The total experience, which could have been as overwhelming as the aegis, was instead subtle and unspeakably beautiful. It was also pushing Xantcha and her archangel away. They were falling beneath the others, including the fifth unmasked angel, carrying Cecina. Xantcha would have preferred to keep her armor, black as it was, around her, but she didn't want to be left alone either. Perhaps releasing the armor would be the most foolish thing she did, but she recited a mnemonic that made it melt away. Black dust streamed away from her. It dirtied the archangel's pure white robes, but he regained his right place in the formation moments before they began a dizzying ascent to the rainbow lace ornament atop the palace's highest, most improbable arch. With nothing else to guide her eyes, Xantcha had misjudged the scale of Sarah's palace. She had seen snow-capped mountains that weren't as high as a single soaring arch, and mighty temples that were smaller than the deceptively delicate orifice on which jeweled ports the archangel landed. Her knees buckled when her feet touched the ground. She was numb, the same way the palace was many-colored awards in shifting waves of sensation. She kept her balance by keeping a close watch on her feet and the floor. "Follow me." Xantcha looked up quickly, a mistake under the circumstances. The archangels had already vanished, and Kenidern, assuming the unmasked angel was Kelidern, had no hands to spare. Xantcha broke her fall with her arms, and stayed where she crouched on the floor or grasslands. I can find someone out for you," Tildid said in a tone that conveyed the notion that he wouldn't recommend accepting the offers. He had a friendly, honest voice. Xantcha had never paid much attention to the handsomeness of men, but even she could see that Kenidern was Cecina had claimed, a very attractive paragon. She guessed he knew how to laugh, even though his face was anxious at that moment. If Cecina wasn't dead, she was clinging to life by a very delicate thread. The agent had burned the tall woman badly. Her flesh was seared and weeping beneath its crust of dirt. "Go," Xantcha told him. "I'll follow." She started to stand in an abandoned attempt. "I'll find a way." Thank you for listening to Chapter 15 of Planeswalker. Please like, subscribe, and follow on YouTube and your chosen podcast platform.